The most important lessons often arise in the moments we least expect, and it's in those moments that we discover who we truly are. This is a story of love, transformation, and choices that could have changed everything, or destroyed it all. But in the end, can love overcome pride and heal the deepest wounds? Stick with me, because you're going to love this story. Hebert Simon was the perfect example of someone whose life seemed easy and uncomplicated. He was handsome, always impeccably dressed, and appeared to glide through the most sophisticated social circles with unshakable confidence. Surrounded by smiling faces and camera flashes at events, Hebert had what many considered a successful life. Yet, behind this dazzling facade, he maintained a cold and reserved demeanor. His view of people was practical and calculated, judging them more for what they could offer than for who they truly were. This way of seeing the world kept him protected, but also isolated from genuine connections. It all began on a sunny Saturday when Hebert, in what he himself deemed a generous gesture, visited a poor neighborhood to deliver donations. Dressed in an impeccable suit and followed by journalists, his presence was more of a spectacle than an act of compassion. He handed out rehearsed smiles while waving condescendingly to the children. Then his eyes locked onto a figure near a nearby landfill. Corine was a young woman of unique beauty, her delicate features contrasting with the harshness of her reality. Her defiant gaze was captivating, radiating an inner strength that required no words. Dressed in simple yet always clean clothing, with her hair tied back in an unassuming manner, she exuded a dignity that defied any outside judgment. Despite the humility of her appearance, there was something magnetic in her posture and the sparkle in her eyes, which seemed to hold dreams far greater than the world around her could offer. When their eyes met, Hebert felt something he couldn't comprehend, a discomfort mixed with curiosity. With a calm voice and not a hint of shame, Corine asked, "Enjoying the view?" The question caught him off guard. He, who always had a ready response, was left speechless. For the first time, someone confronted him without fear, and it unsettled him deeply. In the days that followed, Hebert couldn't get Corine out of his mind. How was it possible that this young woman, living in such humble conditions, could challenge him in such an intense and unforgettable way? His mind, once preoccupied with events and commitments, now constantly wandered to Corine's piercing gaze and how she seemed utterly unfazed by his presence. Determined to understand what it was about her that made him feel so unsettled, he returned to the landfill under the pretext of delivering more donations, but this time, his approach would be different. When Corine saw him arriving, her eyes once again locked onto his with the same unwavering firmness that had already disarmed him. She was busy organizing something amid the simplicity of her surroundings but paused momentarily, tucking a stray strand of hair back into her bun. He noticed how her posture, despite everything, radiated a natural confidence. Corine wasn't just a beautiful young woman, there was a strength in her walk, in her tone of voice, that made him want to know more. "Why do you insist on living here when you could have something better?" Hebert asked, attempting to sound sincere, though he still carried the same demeanor of someone used to being obeyed. Corine arched an eyebrow, crossed her arms, and calmly replied, "This place is what I have now, but it doesn't define who I am." "And you, Hebert? Does that suit define who you are?" Her words hit him like an unexpected punch. He tried to offer money, a gesture he believed solved any problem, but Corine refused without hesitation, maintaining her challenging gaze. There was something about her that intrigued him more and more, and before he could think it through, he heard himself make an impulsive proposal. "What if I offered you a job at my house?" There was a moment of silence as Corine assessed his intentions. Despite her mistrust, she thought of her younger brother and the opportunity this might bring him. Reluctant but determined to take a chance on this unexpected path, she replied, "I accept, but don't think this changes who I am." At Hebert's mansion, Corine found herself in a completely different world. Every room exuded luxury and opulence, and although she felt out of place, her posture remained firm. Hebert, on the other hand, watched her every move, intrigued. He had expected her to be impressed by her surroundings, but instead, Corine seemed unfazed. Everything changed during a party at the mansion. Corine, quietly working at the event, became the target of cruel remarks from a guest. "You're the girl from the dump, aren't you? It must be hard to go from there to here," the woman said venomously. Corine, visibly uncomfortable, tried to keep her composure, but before she could respond, Hebert intervened. "That is unacceptable," he said loudly, shocking the guests. For the first time, he stood by Corine, making it clear he would not tolerate humiliation. That same night, something profound shifted between them. After the party's commotion, Hebert sought out Corine to check on how she felt after the humiliation she endured. He found her alone in the mansion's garden, where the soft moonlight illuminated her delicate features. For a moment, he hesitated but then approached her and, with a sincerity he hadn't expected from himself, asked if she was okay. Corine, still carrying the emotional scars of the night, looked at him seriously and replied that she was used to being judged but hadn't expected it from people he called friends. Her words struck him deeply, and for the first time, Hebert was forced to confront the reality of his choices and the people around him. They sat in silence for a few moments before Hebert began to open up, speaking about how his life had always been surrounded by superficiality and appearances. Corine listened intently, her firm demeanor unwavering. When he finished, she said that no one should be defined by their past, but by what they choose to do moving forward. As their conversation unfolded, the emotional distance between them seemed to fade. Their words softened, their gazes grew more intense, and an undeniable attraction began to build. Hebert, driven by something he could no longer ignore, gently touched Corine's hand. She hesitated for a moment, but soon lowered her defenses. For one night, Corine forgot all the doubts and pain she carried about him, allowing herself to be guided by emotion, surrendering to the warmth of that moment of passion. When they finally kissed, the world around them seemed to disappear. It was a night where both let their walls fall, allowing their souls to connect in a way neither had ever experienced. For Corine, it was a moment of vulnerability but also of freedom. For Hebert, it was the beginning of a transformation, a glimpse of something he never knew he needed. By dawn, however, Hebert, confused by the intensity of his feelings, pulled away. The fear of admitting he had fallen for someone who challenged all his prejudices left him lost in his thoughts, while Corine, still immersed in the memories of the night before, tried to make sense of what it meant for them. A few weeks later, Corine began to notice subtle changes in her body. Constant fatigue, morning sickness, and heightened emotions started to raise her concerns. After taking a pregnancy test, she confirmed what seemed impossible: she was pregnant. Corine was in shock. A mix of surprise, joy, and fear overwhelmed her. She knew her life was about to change forever, but doubts tormented her. How would she tell Hebert? How would he react? Even though she was confused and scared, Corine decided she needed to be honest. After the night they shared, Hebert had distanced himself, diving into his own uncertainties. The confusion he felt about the emotions that surfaced following their connection led him back to his old habits of coldness and isolation. Corine found him at the mansion, still hesitant but resolute. When Hebert saw her, he noticed the nervousness in her expression, and although he tried to maintain his composure, he felt a growing discomfort. She spoke firmly, masking her anxiety. "I need to talk to you." He led her to the living room, where she took a deep breath before revealing, "I'm pregnant, Hebert. And this child is yours." For a moment, silence filled the room. Hebert stood still, as if her words had struck him like a blow. But instead of responding with understanding, he retreated into his old mask of arrogance. "You expect me to believe that?" he said, with a cold, incredulous laugh. "This is just another attempt to take advantage, Corine. You're not fooling me." His words cut Corine deeply. She stared at him, incredulous, feeling the weight of each unjust accusation. "I'm not here for money or anything else you think I want." "I thought you deserved to know," she replied, her voice steady though her heart was breaking. Without waiting for further humiliation, Corine left the mansion, humiliated but with renewed determination. She knew that regardless of Hebert's attitude, she would give her best to raise her child surrounded by love and dignity. Devastated by Hebert's rejection, Corine chose to move forward with courage. She understood that her life would change completely with the baby's arrival, but she refused to let Hebert's cowardly behavior define her. Over time, she secured a job at an office run by Robert, a kind-hearted and generous man. Recognizing her delicate situation, Robert offered genuine support, encouraging her to focus on her well-being and ensuring she received proper prenatal care without worry. With his help, Corine found stability and a welcoming workplace where she could balance her job and the health of her baby. Despite this, Hebert occasionally crossed her mind. Memories of their brief involvement resurfaced, especially in quiet moments, but they were soon overshadowed by his cold and arrogant attitude. Gradually, Corine began leaving the past behind, focusing on her future and the unconditional love she already felt for her child. As time passed, guilt and regret began to consume Hebert. The man who had always displayed coldness and arrogance found himself confronted by his own emotions. He couldn't ignore the fact that something within him had changed the moment he first saw Corine. When they connected at the party, Hebert had fallen in love, but his fear of abandoning his old persona caused him to react in the worst possible way upon discovering her pregnancy. Now the weight of his actions bore down on him, and he realized the enormity of his mistakes. He had not only abandoned Corine, the woman he loved, but also the child she carried. These thoughts haunted him, and Hebert began to recognize how cowardly his actions had been. He tried to bury himself in his routine and ignore the pain, but the image of Corine and the memories of their night together refused to leave him in peace. Eventually, he discovered that Corine was working with Robert, a man he knew from the business world. At first, Hebert went to the office merely to observe her from a distance. He saw her interacting with Robert, and alongside the guilt, he began to feel an undeniable jealousy. Corine's smile and the confidence she exuded in Robert's presence unsettled him. After several days of hesitation, Hebert finally decided to approach Corine and ask for her forgiveness. When he approached her, she was busy but carried the same firm demeanor as always. He apologized, speaking with more sincerity than he thought himself capable of. However, Corine, still deeply hurt, did not believe his words. "You expect me to forget everything so easily, Hebert?" she asked, her gaze serious and her voice heavy with emotion. "You abandoned me at the moment I needed you most." Determined to prove his regret, Hebert began making efforts to be present in Corine's life. He frequently visited the neighborhood where she lived, helping the community and demonstrating that his transformation was genuine. Slowly, Corine began to notice the sincerity in his actions, though she kept an emotional barrier in place. He consistently visited, supported the community's needs, and made it clear that he was willing to face the consequences of his mistakes to regain her trust. Hebert's persistence and dedication to rebuilding what he had broken began to soften Corine's heart. Though she still carried the scars of the past, she realized his intentions seemed genuine. After much reflection, Corine decided to take a significant step. She invited Hebert to be with her during the baby's birth. He accepted the invitation with a mix of surprise and emotion, determined not to disappoint her again. When the big moment arrived, Hebert stood by Corine's side, holding her hand firmly as emotions overflowed. The room was filled with a magical energy, a blend of nervousness, anticipation, and genuine love. When the baby was finally born, Hebert was overcome with an overwhelming emotion. As he held his child in his arms for the first time, tears streamed down his face. In that instant, it felt as though he had found the missing piece of his life. He looked at Corine, who, even in her exhaustion, had a glow in her eyes that reflected strength and tenderness. Hebert moved closer to her, still holding the baby, and spoke with a sincerity he had never shown before. "Corine, I've wronged you in every way possible. But you've transformed me. Every moment by your side has taught me what truly matters in life. I don't want to live without you anymore. Without our family." Corine listened to his words carefully, sensing the truth in every one of them. For the first time, she saw Hebert stripped of arrogance and pretense, a man who finally seemed to understand the value of true love. From that day forward, they decided to try again, this time with no barriers or facades. Hebert made it a priority to be present for every moment, dedicating himself to the family they had created. His transformation was evident to everyone around him, especially to Corine, who finally began to believe that he had truly changed. As time passed, their love blossomed. Hebert made a point of reaffirming his commitment to Corine and their child daily, showing that he was willing to do whatever it took to keep them happy. Together, they built a new life, founded on respect, trust, and above all, the love that had triumphed over every challenge. Their wedding was simple but filled with love. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate the union of two people who, despite all odds, had found in each other the strength to change. Hebert, now a transformed man, held his child in his arms as he promised Corine he would never let her down again. Under the stars, they shared a moment of pure happiness, knowing they were ready to face any challenge together. The love that grew between them had not come easily, but it was real, proving that even the most unlikely stories can have happy endings. If this story of twists, love, and transformation touched your heart, leave a like to support the channel. Share in the comments what moved you most in Hebert and Corine's journey. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive more heartwarming stories that make us reflect and inspire us. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.